Welcome to my channel. It's time for another scary story. So get in the spooky spirit with me by liking this video, subscribing if you dare, and without further ado, let's begin. A man was plagued by mysterious midnight knockings. It happened every night at the stroke of 12. Someone or something would knock on his door 3 times, just like clockwork. At first, it was a light rapping, but it grew louder and more insistent as the weeks went on. Naturally, he grew concerned. Was it a friend? A relative, perhaps trying to get in? He didn't know anyone who would pay him a visit so late at night. And besides, he hadn't heard a sound from any of his neighbors in the weeks he'd lived there. He tried to ignore it, but the nightly ritual continued unabated. Then one night, unable to take the mystery and suspense any longer, he did something. When the clock struck midnight and the knocking began, he got up from his couch and walked to the door. He peered through the peephole and was immediately frightened. There was no one there. The knocking grew louder. Then suddenly it stopped. He tried to go back to his normal routine, pretending that nothing had happened, but every night the same thing occurred, and each night when he looked through the peephole, it was the same. There was no one out there. One night, unable to bear the suspense, he opened the door. But of course, there was no one there. Night after night, he would open the door and step out into the hallway, but there was no one there. Then one night when the clock chimed midnight, he looked through the peephole and saw himself standing outside his own door. He rubbed his eyes. But when he looked again, he saw himself knocking on the door 3 times. Then he stepped back and watched as the figure of himself walked away slowly down the hallway. He knew what he had to do. He had to follow that other version of himself. He opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, following the direction that the other him had taken. At the end of the hall was a door. He knocked on it 3 times. Then he heard a voice from behind the door saying, "Who's there?" Startled, he turned around, and when he did, he saw that the other version of himself had vanished. The knocking stopped. And as he stood there listening, he could hear the other version of himself calling his name from behind the door. The man hesitated, then reached out his hand and knocked on the door a 4th time. And that's the end of story 20. If you want to hear more scary stories, stay tuned for more content. Until then, I'll see you next time.